Okay, so welcome back and welcome, Lillian. Nice to see you. So we have a few more suttas to go through, and of course we can discuss whatever and then take some time for meditation and walking and sitting. So this sutta is called Facts, as you can see, and it's from the Anguttara Nikaya, book 4, number 192. And the Buddha wanted us to consider these 4 things that can be known in 4 situations. So this is, I've mentioned this sutta from time to time, and I feel like it's got a very important theme. It says you can get to know a person's ethics by living with them, but only after a long time, not casually, only when paying attention, not when inattentive, only by the wise, not the witless. Like, we have to apply our wisdom as we observe. And, the basic idea is that we really don't know someone until we've been able to see them consistently in different situations and what are their ethics really. And sometimes I think this also, things come to light when someone's situation changes. So sometimes in the monastery, you can have a perfectly amiable person, coming in and going through the early years of training, and then they get to be more senior and they're suddenly in the role of work mendicant and they just turn into some tyrant or something. And of course, the point isn't that then it's necessarily a lost cause or something, but maybe there's some skill that they need to develop. But in this case, when they're talking about ethics, will a person be the same? For example, in lay life, when they, start getting wealthy or, start gaining power or something like that, and in different situations, seeing how they respond that's what really tells you what their commitment is to virtuous behavior. Welcome back, folks. So we're looking at this sutta on facts. We already read the first couple lines, and you get to know a person's purity by dealing with them. You get to know their resilience in times of trouble, and then the Buddha is going to go on to describe this a little bit. You get to know a person's wisdom by discussion. So those are the 4 areas: ethics, purity, and we'll talk about what that means here, resilience and wisdom. So you get to know a person's ethics by living with them, but only after a long time, not casually, only paying attention, not when inattentive, only by the wise, not the unwise. And why did I say that? He says, take a person who's living with someone and they come to know for a long time this venerable, in this way he's talking about monastics, but it could be anyone. For a long time, this person's actions or deeds have been broken, tainted, spotty, and marred. Their deeds and behavior are inconsistent. This venerable is unethical, not ethical. So this gives you the other side of it too. It's like, yeah, any of us can make mistakes, and maybe there's a time when something isn't going the way it ought to, or they're not, we don't take the right action. But if over a long time this happens again and again, then you really start to get to know kind of where they are with ethics. You take another person who's living with someone and they come to know for a long time this person's actions have been unbroken, impeccable, spotless, and unmarred. Their actions and behavior are consistent. This person is ethical, not unethical. And this is why he said you get to know a person's ethics by living with them for a long time, paying attention. In monastic life, it's kind of interesting because if you live in a monastery, we've been very consistent. Ayachatananda and I have been living together for about 8 years now. Now, Sarna has joined us, and we don't have a lot of coming and going of residents. But I've lived in monasteries where there's a lot of coming and going, and it's true in a lot of places. And so you kind of get, maybe you live together for a rains retreat or something, a rains residence, and you get to know each other a bit, but it's only after a longer time that you really see the full picture. And of course, as you might imagine, like the monastic sangha in a particular tradition is actually a pretty tight-knit community, and like what you do, everyone knows. It's like growing up in that small town I lived in, like everybody knows what your parents did, what your grandparents did, what you do, how you are. And so that's something that's kind of an advantage of being in a pretty consistent place. So the purity, you get to know a person's purity by dealing with them. And in some translations, this is like doing business with them. You have, some kind of dealings. And could you make that thing go to the top? And so why he said this, like you come to know this person deals with one person in one way, and they deal with 2, 3, or many people each in different ways. They're not consistent from one deal to the next. This venerable's dealings are impure, not pure. And you can get that feeling like, especially in business, if you know how someone does business, this also shows up really clear in a small town. You know that they're being sort of honest and straightforward and consistent. They charge the same amount no matter who they're working with, and so on like that. And then it's you notice if it's not like that, and then people of course feel uncomfortable and they can't trust. So take another person and they're dealing with someone, and this venerable deals with one person in one way, and they deal with 2, 3, or many people each in the same way. They're consistent from one deal to the next. This venerable's dealings are pure, not impure. That's why I would say you can get to know a person's purity by dealing with them. So purity, we just talked about ethics, but here it's a little different. Does anybody have any kind of way of characterizing this? Like the difference between like how you interact with people and that relative to ethics? I think in other translations, they might have translated that differently. It's like, any thoughts or?
Integrity?
Yeah, I think that nails it, their integrity. And it's a different level than ethics. It's not like you keep in precepts and blah, blah, blah. It's more fluid than that in a way. Yeah, I like that.
It reminds me like it's easy to deal with people that you like or are similar to you. But like if someone you don't like or something that's different, sometimes it's...
And also asking ourselves, why don't I like this person? It's probably something more than just kind of a superficial or thing.
It doesn't have to be like subtle, like
yeah.
It's not like don't like, it's just like a subtle why don't I
feel comfortable about this? So in terms of boundaries, noticing that discomfort and knowing how to kind of have a certain sense of awareness. So it's awareness, being aware of what's around you, what you're encountering, what the person's like, who you're dealing with. That can be a kind of boundary, I think. You have a kind of an idea of like you're watching and what you'll do in response. because that's really all we can do. We can't change anyone, but we can walk away and we can try to change the dynamic by changing our side of it. So now you get to know someone's resilience in times of trouble. We get to know our own resilience in times of trouble. Sometimes we surprise ourselves. And so he says, take a person who experiences a loss of family, wealth, or health, but they don't reflect the worlds like that, reincarnations like that. And you don't see the word reincarnation in Theravadan Buddhist translations very often, because there's been this distinction that gets made between rebirth and reincarnation. And I think the point that people have made is that they take reincarnation to imply that an ongoing self continues. And clearly Bhante Sujato is not taking it that way. That reincarnation just means rebirth. So I think that's important to notice. This is not saying that there's a continuing ongoing self getting reborn, but that, like, okay, someone dies, we're going to die, you've gotten that terminal diagnosis or something like that. And then this person that the Buddha is talking about first is the one that's not thinking, well, this is just how it works. This is just how life is. And they're not thinking, well, yeah, this is how the 8 worldly conditions revolve around the world, and the world revolves around these 8 worldly conditions. There's gain, there's loss, there's fame, there's disgrace, there's blame and praise and pleasure and pain. Instead of kind of acknowledging that, seeing that, they sorrow and wail and lament, beating their breasts and falling into confusion. That's the standard description when we're just an untaught ordinary person, not someone who's had the opportunity to listen to the Dhamma and take that in. So you take another person who experiences loss of family, wealth, or health, but they reflect, well, that's the world's like that. Reincarnation's like that. You're born, you die, you get reborn, you die, until you let go of everything. That's why the 8 worldly conditions revolve around the world, and the world revolves around those 8 worldly conditions. There is gain and loss, fame and disgrace, blame and praise, pleasure and pain, but they don't sorrow and wail and lament over it because they realize that's just how it is. It keeps going like that. It's been like that forever, and it's going to keep going like that. So why not take it in stride? So that's how you get to know a person's resilience. Is that the way they see things? It doesn't mean it's not challenging. It doesn't mean there isn't pain, but there's an acceptance of that as part of what's natural. And there's less pain if a person thinks in that way and has some, samadhi and some development of wisdom under their belt. And then it's a very different experience. And so he says you get to know a person's wisdom by discussion, but only after a long time, not casually, and only by paying attention, not being inattentive, and only by applying wisdom. And he says, take a person who's discussing with someone, and they come to know, judging by this person's approach, by what they're getting at, and by how they discuss a question, they're not wise. They're not making sense in a way. They're not coming to conclusions that really accord with the Dhamma, you might say. This person doesn't bring up deep and meaningful sayings that are peaceful, sublime, beyond the scope of logic, subtle, comprehensible to the astute. When the Venerable speaks on Dhamma, they are not able to explain the meaning either briefly or in detail. They can't teach it, assert it, establish it, clarify it, analyze it, or reveal it. This venerable is not wise. I have a little trouble with the witless part. I was like, do we really have to go there? But they're not demonstrating their wisdom. So suppose a person with clear eyes was standing on the bank of a lake, and they'd see a little fish rising and think, judging by this fish's approach, by the ripples it makes, and by its force, it's a little fish, not a big one. So it's an interesting simile. You get that image. You can tell it's, you can see the waves that come from this fish. In the same way, a person who's discussing with someone else would come to know, judging by this person's approach, by what they're getting at, by how they discuss a question, they're not wise. Take another person who's discussing with someone and they come to know, judging by this person's approach, by what they're getting at, and by how they discuss a question, they're wise. Why is that? They bring up deep and meaningful saying that what they bring up is deep and meaningful saying that is peaceful, sublime, beyond the scope of logic, subtle, comprehensible to the astute. When this person speaks on Dhamma, they're able to explain the meaning, either briefly or in detail. They teach it, assert it, establish it, clarify it, analyze it, and reveal it. This venerable is wise, not witless. Suppose a man with good eyesight was standing on the bank of a lake, and he'd see a big fish rising and think, judging by this fish's approach, by the ripples it makes, by its force, it's a big fish, not a little one. In the same way, this person who's discussing with someone else would come to know, judging by this person's approach, by what they're getting at, by how they articulate a question, they're wise. So that was his point. There are 4 things that can be known in these 4 situations. Comments? Questions?
Can somebody, it seems like certain people, many people I've encountered, have strength in some of these categories and weaknesses in others. Actually, among many of the suttas you've read, I can think of people who've had strident strengths in some of the virtues, but then also their conduct has been demonstrably awful in other areas.
Yes.
How does one engage with those people? Like the earlier suttas had lots of dichotomies of like, you associate, you don't associate. It's more clear cut in the examples given.
Yeah, Drager, I think a lot of it is like how much, like if a person, has strengths and they have a weakness somewhere, then, we either seeing them bolster up that weakness, or we see them kind of, continuing to fall into that situation again and again. And that's one thing that can help us decide whether or not we want to associate with them. And, like if someone really is, for example, the Buddha is referring a lot to the mendicants here. If someone really is a Dhamma teacher, say, and they're, teaching a lot and all of that, and then they, do something that's quite scandalous, even, like if there's something happens one time and they're really like totally apologize and change their behaviors and make sure that doesn't happen anymore, that's one thing. If they act like they're going to change and then they keep doing things, or it's happening again and again over a long time, it's probably someone not to associate with, no matter even we do see strengths in other areas. So it's like really how consistent is this person improving? Are they trying? Those are all things to consider. The Buddha does say in another sutta that, if you in that case, he's talking about these four qualities that often are appear together: faith, wisdom, generosity, and virtue. You see those four spoken about again and again in the suttas. And the Buddha in one place says, if you see someone, if you're around someone who is exceptional in one of those, like they're exceptionally generous, then emulate that in them. And if some of the other parts aren't as great, you just don't worry about that too much. It doesn't mean that they're really doing something wrong, but you focus on this thing that they really excel at, and that's what you emulate. And find a different person who has really amazing wisdom and emulate that, and a different person maybe who's really strong in virtue and emulate that, or really strong in their faith and emulate that. But in any of those cases, I don't think you can go really super far the other way on some part. I mean, there's no way that a person who really has wisdom is gonna, be unvirtuous in a gross way. I just don't think it's the case. I don't think you can really trust their quote unquote wisdom if they're also doing something pretty horrendous in the virtue category, say.
What constitutes horrendous, like a chronic pattern of harsh speech and alienating people from a community, or what's the bar?
It depends on I would say it depends on that, how harsh and for what reasons. But what I was thinking of is something like sexual misconduct, because you do see that happening in, Buddhist communities where, and something like that is just, that's unacceptable for, you don't want to associate, you don't want to in any way promote that. And if the speech is harsh enough, unreasonable enough, scathing enough, you wouldn't want to prop that up either by in other ways revering that person. So in those earlier suttas we looked at today, it's you don't follow that person, you don't associate with that person, you don't revere them, you don't praise them, you stay away. But it is a thing you have to understand, how much, what is it that would cause that to be the decision.
So is that mostly reserved for Pravajika offenses, or?
I think it can be less than that too. I know of a monk, other monks have told me every monk that lives with this monk for a period of time is traumatized. That is unacceptable. And you may not be able to categorize that monk's behavior in a particular, it's not a parajika, but it's psychologically damaging enough that you really wouldn't recommend someone to go there. Yeah, stuff like that. So it's we really have to be wise in our evaluation of things. And all of this pertains to boundaries, I think, how do we know how to set those boundaries? And sometimes, we can have a lot of faith, but maybe not a lot of wisdom. And we may think, oh, it's a monk or a nun, they've got to, trustworthy, they're trustworthy. Well, that should be true, but it may not be in some case. And so we need to always pay attention.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Draker. Yeah, Kerdwin?
I was thinking about long-term friendships that I've had with people who exhibit sometimes troubling things. I would say maybe it's more things like harsh speech or gossip, stuff like that. I find I I associate less and less with people in general, other than online and Dhamma communities. And I choose Dhamma friends mostly. Like if I'm going to try and develop a friendship, it's usually someone who's like showing up to, you know, a meditation group or a study group or something like that. But it's troubled me a little bit, like with my longer term, like my ex-girlfriend in particular, who can really exhibit some harsh speech sometimes. And I don't want to like cut everybody out of my life that isn't like, you know, like she's not even a Buddhist. She's not, you know, not following the precepts. But, you know, for the most part, she's, you know, a good ethical person. It's just in this one area, she exhibits this behavior that is troubling to me. And, but I guess I feel like you were saying, holding up, you know, specific ethical behaviors, like generosity, things like that. And I've been thinking about it like I have really thought long and hard about letting people go from my life who exhibit behaviors that I don't care for. But I finally decided that if I did that, I wouldn't have any friends. And particularly like long-term friendships. And so what I have decided to do instead, and I don't know if this is like would be considered correct, but like I ignore bad behaviors and I just remove myself from the situation if that happens. And then I try to sort of lift up others' good behaviors or ethical behaviors in some way. And express appreciation and, you know, do things like that. Because I sort of feel like, isn't it somewhat, at least my job as a Dhamma practitioner, to behave in a way that inspires others? And if I want everybody to be like perfectly on the path, then who am I going to inspire? I mean, I don't know. That's sort of, you know, that's my question.
Well, I think you're answering your question in a way because it depends, right? It depends, like you're saying, people, it's not all black and white. We're not all just like, you know, doing awful things or doing great things. There's a lot of mixture. And it, you know, when you get back to the suttas where the Buddha said you have to look at your own mind, is your mind getting negatively affected by this? And I think the boundary you're setting is, well, when the bad stuff is happening, I just pull away. Maybe I can walk away, you know, and I don't praise that. You know, it's like you know, all of that, what you described, it's like you're aware that there's only so much we can do. It's like you don't have the permission or the invitation to be kind of instructing this person. It's their life, it's their choices, and they're not asking. Maybe they can see that you're not doing that and you're happier than maybe at a previous time in your life where maybe you were doing some of that. Who knows? I'm not saying you would, but I know I did, you know, things in the past that I wouldn't do anymore or say anymore. And, you know, it's like, so maybe if that person, maybe one day they'll, you know, like reflect that, oh, she kind of disappears every time I get on a rant or whatever it is, you know, and maybe somehow that'll be a message. And then, but you're not doing it for that. We can't, like, it's not about manipulating people or trying to get them to be different. It's like looking at your own mind. Is my mental state going down because of this? Am I picking up on this, whatever it is, greed, hatred, or delusion? And is it increasing in me because I'm associating with this person? If it's not, it sounds like it's not. You're holding the boundary. You're not letting that become your way of doing things. You're stepping away when that's happening. And when it's not, and when things are nice, you draw closer. And see, in some way, we set up that condition that we have the ability to step away and not be, in the line of fire, you might say, when this other person is having problems. And people change.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they get better and sometimes they get worse. And sometimes they get worse before they get better. And we do too, maybe. So we can always be kind of just observing that. And, to the degree we can have the equanimity when people are doing things that are unskillful, and, wait and see, but not add more fuel to that in any way, and not let that start to take hold in ourselves. But I think, like a lot of these suttas they seem so black and white. This is what you see anyway. And then if you read other suttas, it rounds it out a little bit and you'll see a different perspective. And so sometimes we just need to okay, I get how this is true. And there are those other situations that are more shades of gray that we have to make decisions. And Ajahn Kana would say wisdom solves the problem. To use wisdom.
One of the things I find that some of my friends do, it's not negative behaviors. They're not doing anything unethical. But when they're in the dating mode, oh my gosh, I need to be in a relationship, and they want to talk about it, I find it so stressful because I pull myself out of that whole situation of not wanting that grasping and clinging.
Yeah.
That I find hard to hear. It's not an unethical behavior that they're doing, but so I think, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. It's regardless of what the specifics are, if there's something that is happening internally with us, that's negatively affected by that, we might need to pull away a bit. There's probably some investigation or something we might want to do for ourselves to not, sort of resolve whatever seems to be kind of a hook there. But it's perfectly understandable. And, to be a good friend also means to be sensitive to that in other people, if I see this in myself. Sometimes I'll go into a topic that affects someone else in a way that I don't expect. And then we just say, okay, I don't have to do that, So, I think this is another place where we need to know ourselves and where we're at and have boundaries around it. Hopefully that aren't, the boundaries themselves aren't creating any harm in that relationship. Like you said, this person's not doing anything wrong or anything. It's not working on your side of it. And I think that's fair enough. It's not completely bulletproof, and sometimes that happens with trauma too. We don't want to over isolate or insulate or hold ourselves too dear, you might say, but we want to be able to see, what I don't know, it's not exactly what we can tolerate, but we want to see, am I okay with this? And again, there's nothing wrong. It's just that it's traveling into an area where there's some work that maybe still is needed to be done internally for us. And then, being sensitive to that and kind of keeping watch?
Me, it's a little bit. What I realize is that when I watch people doing harm to themselves, like I have a friend who unfortunately recently is out of a long-term relationship, is like, oh, I have to dye my hair now because before I get on the apps online. I'm like, no, you don't. Be yourself, and it's the only way you'll find a relationship anyhow, is be yourself. And then she's like, no. And when I see people putting that suffering, I think that's what triggers in me. Like, oh yeah, I wasted so many years of my life doing that. If I was going to go back out and date, I'm not going to dye my hair. I'll just be myself. So I think that's where I find that's painful when I see people doing things to themselves like that. Yeah.
I mean, internally, where I went with that, when you were just saying it is, after the second time you say it, it's like, yeah, whatever. It's not going to hurt her to dye her hair, and she'll work it out, and a certain amount of equanimity coming in, to really strengthen that part, to see, whether or not the person is actually doing some kind of potentially long-term damage for themselves. That's another, like, where is the boundary with when I jump in? And this really comes up with our kids. Like, when do I step in to stop them from doing this thing that I know is not going to end well? And sometimes we have to be step back a lot more than we would like to, because it won't work to try to interrupt it.
Yeah.
But, if it's not going to be death or long-term damage, maybe we don't have to say anything either. It's okay. And I know what you mean. You'd love to not, especially with our kids, you'd love for them not to have to go through the suffering we went through to find this, and obviously with our friends too. But in some ways, some of these things we can only learn by doing it. And the fact that you mention it, at least then maybe at some point, this is another thing, we never know when something we've said is gonna come up for somebody and help. And it's like, okay, you said it, whatever, whatever she does. And you might see, how much can I listen, really leaving myself out of it entirely, just being present with where she's at in her life and how that feels for her. And then, that builds up some of our stamina too, our mindful listening and compassion and equanimity.
So for those of you who don't know, my mom passed last December, and it's interesting when it comes up in conversation with people, I would mention my dead mother, which is a statement of fact. But some people, it triggers this reaction, like, don't say that, don't say your mom's dead. I'm like, but she is. So I developed a sensitivity around how I discuss my mom's death, whether it's whether I should even use that adjective. But you never know when you enter, especially someone you don't know very well, casual people, it triggers things in how they react and their karma. And it's interesting how I kind of walk that fine line. I'm not trying to fudge a fact or the truth. I mean, she is dead, but then I don't want to step on people's toes, whatever it triggers in their experience, in their reaction. I don't know where they're at. So it's I'm playing with this fine line recently. It's very interesting, when I choose to tell people and who I tell it to and how I tell it.
And how euphemistic you need to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, so because we're in a culture that doesn't want to face death.
Mm-hmm. So it's been very interesting exercise, and because it's kind of like what you said earlier about boundaries, right? Some people really cannot deal with it, and some people are fine. Like yesterday, I was have a phone conversation about somebody whose son killed himself, and I don't know this person very well, but he just kind of blurted it out. I was like, wow, it's interesting how people have different, how they deal with this very heavy thing that happens to everybody.
Yeah.
So this is what sort of the gift of my mom's death, I guess. That's how I see it. How I approach people, interact with people, what it triggers in me when other people talk about death of their loved ones, especially a child dying before his or her parents, is very tragic thing in my view.
Yeah, it's a hard thing.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. Did you have something you wanted to say before, Grace?
Yeah. I think something that this conversation is bringing up for me is, I think so far we're talking about when to assert boundaries. And I wanted to also bring in the experience of having someone assert healthy boundaries to me.
Gee, thanks, Grace.
Well,
I'm not sorry.
But I wanted to say, like, it's been such a beautiful lesson for me to learn that when someone's asserting them with kindness and wisdom and skillfully, they're really just teaching me how to be with them better and to love them better.
That's beautiful. Yes. And I knew he wouldn't mind. I hope you didn't mind my teasing. It's like, that's like feeling that, having that clarity is so helpful. This is what works for me or doesn't work for me, can be super helpful. And then the other part is like, what do we do when we assert these boundaries, but people are crashing through them?
I just love the analogy of like a map of the heart. We're just mapping each other's hearts and finding where the path is.
Where the landmines are.
Where the landmines. Sometimes the landmines.
Right.
Other times the detours, whatever, right?
Yeah.
We're just figuring
The shortcuts.
Yeah.
Well, and the details, it's like, one time I traveled somewhere and I bought a map and I thought, oh, good, I'm going to know where I am. And then I realized the map wasn't scaled down enough. The little roads weren't on it and I couldn't find what I needed to find. And, so this mapping of the heart, it can take time. Like the Buddha said here, it can take time before we know what those inroads are and really know how to navigate that. And I feel like we've seen that in our relationship where it took time to understand each other. And so much of this, at least lately, like yesterday, talking about truth, and if we are dedicated to knowing what's true rather than feeling like I have to be right, then we're gonna listen and we're gonna inquire too. And, to really recognize that if something's happening there that I don't understand, can I let go of whatever fear or discomfort or whatever feels triggered in there, and long enough to be able to at least discover, what's happening over there before reacting. It can take some time. And of course, it's really helpful if both people or everyone involved is trying to do that. And of course, that's often not the case. So we have to do as much as we can. And then that self-care comes in. If there is the need for some boundary to be there to make sure we are taking care of ourselves. So now we've got this one, Advice to Sigalika. This is a great sutta. If you haven't read it, it's in the Long Discourses, number 31. It might need a little elucidation. I'm not sure, because it's very, these suttas are set at the time of the Buddhists, more than 2,500 years ago. So there might be a few things in the culture at the time that we're not so familiar with. This is the one where the Buddha is walking by and this man is, his hair's all wet. He's like bathed and he's bowing to the 6 directions. And the Buddha's like, what are you doing? And he explained that his father, when he was on his deathbed, said that he must venerate the 6 directions. And so he's trying to do that every day and in the way that he was taught. And the Buddha really engages him and never tries to push his ideas on this guy, which is really kind of sweet to see. He just says, yeah, we don't do it that way. And the Noble One's discipline. And then this young man is like, well, how do you do it? It's the next logical question. It was like, okay, bye. No, it wasn't that way. It was, like, how do you do it? I don't think he was too into it either. It's just like, this is what my dad told me to do. It's his last breath. I have to do it. So as you can see, this is section 11. So there are 10 previous sections. The Buddha's already been talking to him quite a bit. And this is the one on friends. So he gave this young man a lot of advice about in the process of that discussion around the kinds of things that really bring a person to ruin and the kinds of things that really can help you. And you get the sense this is a young guy, like, yeah, don't go gambling, womanizing, and like drinking and carousing, stay home at night and, do your work and take care of your wife and, like stuff like that. So anyway, here the Buddha is talking about kinds of friends, and he has 4 kinds of what's called here fake friends. And the Buddha also calls them enemies disguised as friends. And he says it's, the taker, the talker, the flatterer, and the spender. And for each one, this is kind of typical style of the time. For each of the 4, there are 4 things. So we've got, like, what are the 4 things about the fake friend that's all take? He's all take. Well, your possessions end up as theirs. I don't know, how does that happen? You loan them something, they never give it back. That could be, something like that. Giving little, they expect a lot. They do their duty out of fear, and they associate for their own advantage. Like they're always looking at what's this going to get me. You have any relatives like this? No. Yeah, and so that's a fake friend. Who's all take. Something that I thought about because of a series of experiences, that you have some people who really want the advantage no matter what the situation is. They want more than other people get. And you have some people who really want to cut it exactly even. You eat out and they divide the check to the penny. When you get another person who's always giving a bit more. And of course, we like associating with them. And if we're one that always wants to give a little bit more, that's kind of sweet. There's a little arguing over, like, no, let me take the check. There's some fun in that. It's okay. But the conclusion I came to, and this is because of something my father said, I don't know, this might be in that book you just read. He said that he told us as kids, when you feel like you're cutting it down 50-50, you're actually taking more than half. Because there are so many unseen, unacknowledged things that come to support you. Or there's that. Actually, I added that. What he said was, you're coming from your own perception, your own perspective, and you're going to see, you're going to see in this piece, you're going to see the 50% way over towards your side. you're really, like over there at 70% or something. So you got to give more than you think to be halfway. That's what he used to say. And I think it's true. I think when we're really trying to cut it right down the center, we're probably taking advantage. And the part that I reflected on is there are so many things that come to us to support us that we aren't really aware of, and we're not really acknowledging. There are a lot of things that my friends do that I don't know they're doing. And I need to also be able to give more into that, I think, to be fair. But this person is one of those all take people. They want they want the best end of the deal every time. Then you have the fake friend who's all talk. And a different translation doesn't say they're hospitable in the past. It says they talk about how hospitable they've been in the past. They talk about, yeah, well, I did this and I did that and and then they talk about how they're going to do great things in the future. But in the present moment, when something's needed, they are like, I'm busy. I've got to, I've got to, there's something else I've got to do. And so, and they're full of meaningless pleasantries, it says here. And they are always, when something needs doing in the present, they point to their own misfortune. Something's going wrong, so they can't help. So that's the one that's all talk. And then there's the flatterer. And it's interesting, they praise you to your face and they put you down behind your back. That's kind of obvious from a flatterer, but they support you equally in doing good things and bad things, which is kind of like, I never thought of that. They just want to flatter you. They don't care whether it's valid or, it's praiseworthy or blameworthy. You're just going to like get that aroma of being puffed up. And if we're susceptible to that, it can be really yucky. Yucky, put it that way, technical term. And then that's probably it, the four things.
If I may.
Yeah, please.
They support you equally in doing bad and doing good. But I don't know, in my experience, it's very rare to have friends who they support you in whatever you do usually. They're like.
You think this is rare or you think that's common?
I guess what I mean to say is it's rare, I think in today's day and age, people don't want to be told that they're not doing something good. Or, if we say, hey, well, I don't know, that's a great thing, they'd rather somebody say, yeah, great, you've covered all these countries, go and see I don't know. It's just like, whatever their vices are, they also want people who kind of say, yeah, go on and,
They want yes people.
Yes people, yeah.
Yeah, that was always looked down upon in my experience. Don't be a yes person. Be an honest person. But yeah, maybe. But I think in this case, someone who's a flatterer, they're trying to win you over in a way that's not genuine. It's not just like, well, they're not going to want to hear my views of how senseless it is to go bungee jumping in Thailand, or whatever, Go to the monastery. What are you thinking? You're risking your life.
And I think maybe there's a little bit I'm just thinking from my own perspective, if I'm with somebody, maybe encouraging when they're doing good and maybe even maintaining silence when I'm hearing them, which I think may not be really a great thing for them.
Yeah. Well, that's all that's needed.
We met a friend who said, well, I have to drink alcohol because if I don't drink alcohol, nobody will hang out with me in Australia. So,
Stay out of Australia.
So I didn't
know
really
places
know how to
in
react.
Australia. I know places in Australia they can go. That's right. There are some great monasteries in Australia. Anyway, sorry. Yeah. They're saying that. What do you,
like how do you respond to that sometimes? But I think,
it's so easy for us. We're wearing the banner of you know what you're going to get. But yeah, it is and you kind of read the situation. There are some people who would be interested in that perspective. Maybe they're saying it because they aren't sure if they want to do this. Or maybe they're saying it because they want an excuse. And they want to, it's not me. I wouldn't do this myself, but I have to because that's what's expected if I want to have a social life. But it's interesting, isn't it? It's who knows what's going on in there? Yeah, but if you said, well, maybe it's not worth it. I don't know. My answer, I used to do this, like, go to parties and you put something in your glass without alcohol in it. He really cares. I mean, it's not true in all groups. I've known some where friends will really try to pressure someone into drinking. But I think when they get a little bit more mature, they realize that, I mean, sometimes that's fatal. Don't want to do that. So anyway, I don't know. I tend to, I'm going to tend to be on the side of poke them a little.
Yeah, certainly. And I think this also helped me see how I can be a better friend to others by making sure that I'm not kind of nodding along and like, when I see that they're doing something which isn't probably good for them. So
Yes.
I think that's a good learning.
That's a very good learning. And I think that's what the Buddhist trying to do here too. Teach this young man like how you can be a good friend. So the friend that's the spender wants you to go out drinking, roaming the streets at night, going to the festivals, gambling. Yeah, that's their contribution. And then he says it's like basically the same thing again in verse. An astute person understands these four enemies for what they are and keeps them at a distance as they shun a risky road. So that's a good image, like, do I want to go out with these people? Stay on the nice, well-lit highway. It's like, I just stay out of there. Okay, good-hearted friends. This is really quite beautiful. The good-hearted friend who's a helper, they guard you when you're negligent. And I didn't look at the Pali, but usually it says when you're unmindful, like when you're not aware or you're not paying attention, they guard you and they guard your property. They keep you safe in times of danger. And when something needs doing, they give you twice as much money as you need. My parents were like that. Yeah. Yeah. And this is a beautiful, that's going some. And then the friend who's the same in good times and bad, they tell you their secrets and they keep your secrets. They don't abandon you in times of trouble, and they'd even give their life for your welfare.
Question.
Oh, yes.
You mentioned that your parents were like that, like giving twice as much money as.
It might not have been quite twice, but it's always a little more. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious. I'm sure they didn't give to everybody in the world who needed it because they wouldn't have any money left to give.
They only had 2 kids.
She meant
Just
her
the
and her
kids.
brother.
Just
Yeah,
the
just-
kids.
Yeah.
She didn't say that.
No, not to everyone. Although when, especially my parents were very generous. They were generous with their time. They did a lot to support people. My mom was always picking people up who didn't drive and take them to town and do stuff like that. And my dad was always doing stuff for neighbors. And yeah, so there was a lot of giving. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, the counselor, the friend who's a counselor, they keep you from doing bad things and they support you in doing good things. Again, back to that. Do I have that role in this person's life or not? They teach you what you don't know and they explain the path to heaven. So really, how do you get to a really good place from here? Whether you think it's going to be heaven, the Buddha said, don't stop at heaven, get enlightened. But that's a whole lot better than other things. This person's really going to support you. And then the friend who's compassionate, they don't delight in your misfortune. Well, that's an important thing to notice. If your friends are like, ha ha ha,
Evil villain.
evil laugh, like,
Only kids do that.
what?
Only young kids do that. I don't see any.
Some people never grow up, if you notice.
It can be more subtle, like a tone of jealousy, I think.
Yeah. Feeling a little bit good about your misfortune is really pretty sad, but yeah, they don't do that. Good friends don't do that. They delight in your good fortune. They keep others from criticizing you, or they stand up for you when they hear criticism, and they encourage praise of you. So that's the good-hearted person. And I thought we would go into, I don't think I can just go here. I think I may have to stop sharing and start again. Let me see. Yes, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And I'm going to go into this sutta because I think it's nice to see. We're going to go, so you can see these are the various areas of this sutta. There's the fake friends, the good-hearted friends. And now we're going to go to covering the 6 directions. This is another part of the sutta that you get to see kind of how the Buddha felt we should treat each other. And again, like, okay, we're talking about boundaries. So what happens when this isn't the way it's unfolding, and what do we do? So this is in these close relationships where we might have some boundary issues. And the first one, so he's talking about the 6 directions. And again, he's teaching this, like how do the noble ones revere the 6 directions. And he said, parents, you take them as being the East, teachers as the South, partners and children the West, and friends and colleagues the North. The people who work for you are at the nadir, below, we'll say, and the ascetics and Brahmins are the spiritual teachers up above. So between the child and parents, so a child should serve their parents in 5 ways. I'll support those who supported me. So we acknowledge that our parents, even if they were pretty unskillful or had all kinds of problems, we did somehow manage to come into this world and get to this point, and it required their help. So for whatever it is that they gave, which in a lot of cases is an enormous amount, we want to support them. Not just tit for tat, but you can't really do the same thing in return that they did for us by bringing us into the world. So that's pretty huge. So giving that support. I'll do my duty for them. I'll maintain the family lineage. Like, I don't think that means you have to run out and have children, but maybe carry things on in a good way. I'll take care of the inheritance. So I'm not just going to blow it in after all your hard work. And when they've passed away, I'll make offerings on their behalf, like remembering them. And then it says parents who are served by children in those 5 ways show compassion to them in 5 ways. They try to keep them from doing bad things. They support them in doing good things. They train them in a profession. They connect them with a suitable partner. They transfer the inheritance in the due time. And so, of course, all of these things we're going to see in these relationships are very culturally based. But when we think about our relationships with our parents, again, it depends a lot on the situation. Like, my son doesn't have any connection with his father, and for good reason. His father, we won't go there. And, it's like, he's tried repeatedly to have a relationship. He was a monk for a long time, and he's tried, again, there's all that how to forgive and have a lot of loving kindness, but also the Buddha you have to have boundaries. If this person is not trustworthy, it's not getting any better, he's still alcoholic, it's like, this is not a trustworthy person. So if there's enough woundedness still there, that's all you can do is have a clear boundary and stay away. And so there's like, this is all dependent on what is the situation really. And it's important to know that it's not just, oh, well, I, automatically have to behave in a certain way. It really, really depends. Then there's the student-teacher relationship and what you do there. The student rises up for the teacher, serves them, listens to them, looks after them. They're careful in learning what they're being taught, and teachers they educate and they help them memorize. Well, maybe we don't help them memorize these days, but we help them learn how to think, hopefully, and explain whatever it is that we're teaching to them so they have the knowledge that they need, and then introduce them to friends and colleagues to give them a way forward in their profession or whatever it is. And there's a little, this protect them in every region. It says in the footnote, it refers to when the student has completed their studies and goes off to travel, the teacher does what they can to ensure their safety in other places. It is sweet. When you look at these, if we really lived this way, it's such a beautiful life. And we can look at, how do I make this life beautiful in my circumstances? So the husband and wife, right now we would like to say partners. Your partner treat it, so it's very male-female, by treating her with honor, by not looking down on her, by not being unfaithful, by relinquishing authority to her, and by presenting her with adornments. Really pretty stuff. And marriage is based on mutual care and respect. Okay, this is Bhante Sujato. Like, no, it's based on mutual care and respect, not on dominance and obedience. Did you get that? Yes, thank you. And that the wife is well organized in her work. She manages the people that work for them. She's not unfaithful. She preserves the earnings. She's deft and tireless in all her duties. So yeah, it's a little not quite fitting our cultural context right now here, but we can certainly see the beauty in it if, we kind of reshape it like Bhante Sujato did here.
That's Buddha's Indian culture talking.
Yeah, mutual care and respect. Not dominance and obedience. Thank you. Yes. Okay, what about friends and colleagues? So giving kindly words, taking care, equality. So those are those four that are like sustaining favorable relationships. You give gifts where it's helpful, your kind words, you give doing things, favors for someone, helping them, and treating them impartially, treating your friends and colleagues impartially, not using tricky words, like I guess being straightforward. I'm not sure. Friends and colleagues then will respond by guarding them when they're negligent, guarding their property when they're negligent, and keeping them safe from danger and not abandoning them in times of trouble. So how we interact with the people we work with and are friends with. And then what about the people who work for us? Well, the person who has employees should organize the work according to their ability, pay for their food and their wages, nurse them when they're sick, share special treats, so here we got, work that people can do and support them in succeeding, actually give them fair wages, give them health care, give them bonuses, and give them time off work.
Yeah.
Hallelujah!
Vote for the Buddha.
Vote for the Buddha. Yeah. Workers. So that's, you can see the first part of this paragraph here in the middle. What you do for your employees, and then what do the employees do in return? Have you ever worked in a place where there's like this really like where we care about you? You're thinking about it, are you? We care about you, then what is it? You know, people don't want to steal the stuff from the office. They want to like, so what do you do when you get up early, you go to bed last? So you're there to really like you open up the shop, you close the shop, you don't steal, you do your work well. You promote the good reputation of the company and the employer. And, you know, this is age-old truth. 2,500 years ago, it was the same stuff. Why we don't have better management? Well, greed. Okay, so then the spiritual teachers, the way, you know, loving actions by body, speech, and mind, not turning them away at the gate when they have their alms bowls, providing them with material needs. And the job of the mendicants or the ascetics is to help people avoid doing bad things, support them in doing good things, think of them with kindly thoughts, teach them what they don't know, clarify what they've already learned, explain the path to heaven. And that's how all of these directions are kept safe and free of peril. Any comments or questions? Do we need a break? Maybe we do. Yeah. Okay. So friends, give what's hard to give, do what's hard to do, endure what's hard to endure, reveal their secrets, keep your secrets, and they don't abandon you in times of trouble. They don't look down on you in times of loss. This is the kind of person you should associate with. Well, we've seen most of that, so that's pretty straightforward. I think we'll stop there. There's a couple more, but oh wait, this one. We'll just do this one and then we'll stop. Another 7 qualities for the people we associate with. They're likable, agreeable, respected, and admired. They admonish you when they accept, and they admonish you and they accept admonishment. They speak on deep matters and they don't urge you to do bad things. It's another 7 things that are good. And so it says they're lovable, respected, and admired, an admonisher who accepts admonishment, speaks on deep matters, and doesn't urge you to do bad things. The person in whom these things are found is your friend. If you want to have a friend benevolent and compassionate, you should keep company with such a person, even if they send you away. Don't go away. Okay, that's all we're going to do for now. So, take some time to do some meditation. I kept you longer than I had planned. I came, oops.
It was from Lynn talking about it takes 12 years to get to know someone according to the commentary.
Oh, 12 years. That's a long time. Bet you feel like you know each other pretty well. Yeah. What?
I don't even know myself.
Yeah.
So figuring it out.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Any last thoughts on boundaries or related topics? No pressure. Yeah, it's okay.
I was just curious if you'd have any advice to share for us at work. I know that we're kind of out of time, I guess. But
No, we have
we
till
do?
4
Okay.
o'clock.
Oh, okay.
That's
great.
yeah. So
then,
yeah, perfect
if
time.
you have any advice for us in terms of how we can establish boundaries and follow the Dhamma at the same time and so on this year.
Yeah, I think at the base of it, keeping our priorities straight. So it's hard to do because most of us at work were being encouraged to make the priorities, the current project, the shareholders getting the biggest return that they can, and so on. And that the Dhamma practitioner has different priorities. So the priorities to be ethical and the priority to make the interactions and the experiences that we're having part of our practice. So, that's can be seen as a conflict, but I don't think it has to be. It's just a matter of not really buying into the commercial corporate model, because we are aware that that's not actually leading to happiness. And we can appreciate the stress that people carry, and it can be hard not to pick it up, but we can avoid it. And I think that that's the core of it, being clear about what our own priorities are, what our own values are. And then, sometimes, the Buddha certainly talks about the practice of Dhamma, the practice of being a noble disciple who's going against the stream of the world. And sometimes we're going to feel that discomfort. But it's, we've got all the tools we need. So having our precepts, having our Kalyanamita, having our the Brahma Viharas to rely on, doing our regular meditation practice, it all helps us to be clear and solid, much more solid than we would be without it. And then even though maybe the people we work with or work for want us to do something else other than, work ourselves to death for them, then, they'll just have to deal with the disappointment. And, we try, but, and then I think it's our practice also brings value to the situation that they may find is really helpful. So it's quite nice, walk into the office and someone says, yeah, I always feel better when you're around. Yeah. I feel calm. Suddenly I feel calm. The Cheshire cat smile comes out. And our willingness to at work be able to bring some peace to interactions that usually might escalate is also helpful. So yeah, you can think, well, am I really going to keep this job if I stay committed to my own values? And if you can't, then it's better to leave anyway. And I think thinking about the people involved and relating to them with respect. Not a respect like you're above me, but a respect as a human being and understanding that they're under pressure. Excuse me. I think it's really helpful that we have friends on the path, because then if we wish to, we can talk about the specifics. It's also helpful to be around other people who have had jobs in the world and understand this pretty clearly. And that's most of us. Yeah.
I think for me, it's like the last 3 years, my work has been improved a lot since I came into Dhamma.
Yay.
Yes. Because I'm a teacher and the work is kind of close to psychology. Buddha was the biggest psychologist ever. So for me, it was, and then I started bringing that. We already had in mission colleges mindfulness workshops and all, but I also started doing it more often with our faculty members when the semester starts. I'm going to do this semester also coming. Last time I did nonviolent communication, and then I did self-compassion for educators. And I'll be doing Qigong and Vipassana meditation this time. So introducing slowly. And I think world is moving in that direction. The way I see it, since pandemic, people's priority has been changed a lot for me. But that's what I see. And then people
That's nice.
And they're going towards calmness. They want to have peace, and all the departments are working towards that. How can we bring more peace to our students and the other faculty members? So every time for me, it's like I can completely connect with both.
Hooray, Mission College.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are universities they should speak to about that.
Actually, the university is also doing it. UC Santa Cruz. I think I heard the people in the education system around people are, because we all know that how much stress we all have in life, and it's not going to take us anywhere. The coming generation. So it's nice. I do mindfulness every class. Before I start class, I have this now routine from last semester that we do mindfulness meditation for 5-10 minutes, come back to the present moment. Now we can learn something. Otherwise, your mind are too busy, you won't be.
Oh, and it's amazing how much more in tune people are with each other if they sit together before they start a meeting. Night and day difference.
So I'm very grateful to him. And all the teachers.
Me too. Oh my God. Amazing.
Looking at him, thank you for coming in my life. Thank you so much.
Yes, that faith and gratitude for what the Buddha gave us. Amazing. Yeah, thank you.
Kieran's got their hand up.
Oh, Kieran. Oops. Can you hear me? Yeah. She does.
Thank you. I thought I'd ask this question because I feel like I struggle with it quite a bit. So in my housing situation, I mean, I still have an apartment and I've been avoiding it because there's so much hostility there. Ultimately, I asked for accommodations for my disability to make it possible for me to be there. And apparently they have a history with denying accommodations to people, I found out. And so I have this very contentious relationship with my landlords. They're corporate. They're basically getting, subsidies to have people who live in poverty live in their places, and while denying accommodations. And ultimately, my decision was to leave. I'm living in my van. My decision was to leave because it basically was like living in a abusive relationship. been in abusive relationships, and it was the feeling that I got from it. And but I'm also involved in a legal case against them, and I struggle with this because I don't feel like it's like they've had other legal cases against them. And part of why I do it, it's not because I actually, at this point, I don't even want the accommodations because I don't want to live there because it's a hostile environment. There's no reason for me to want to be there.
Yeah.
But part of why I continue with it is because other disabled people are going to need accommodations that they're not granting. And I don't know, I struggle with this because I don't even know what the remedy for it is. I mean, this is greed, hatred, and delusion, right?
Well, the remedy is finding them if they're found in, what am I trying to say? Out of line with, what they're required to do, which I think is your case, right? You're just showing that they are not following the regulations that they're supposed to follow. Is that correct?
That's correct. And part of why I feel a little bit like, what's the point now? Because I found out that there have been a number of other legal cases against them. So obviously they have a pattern of treating people in a hostile manner who have disabilities and not giving them the right to fair housing.
Somehow they get away with it.
Somehow they get away with it. And what I think is that the fines are not enough. Like the person was telling me, in order to get them to pay out money, I have to prove all these things. And the fact is, I don't want money from them. I just want them to stop doing this behavior to people. So I continue with the case, but ultimately, like I don't even go to the apartment if I can avoid it, because it's such a hostile place for me.
So this is a civil case, and obviously it's a civil case, right?
Yeah.
And it's not really about appealing to whatever laws there are, or is it that they're supposed to follow around how they treat their tenants? I mean, you would hope that there's some governmental agency or something that has oversight for such facilities. They don't just pay them blindly, right? They don't just pay anybody. They've got to have they've got to hold some kind of standards. And what I'm hearing you say is they're not doing that.
That's how it appears.
Yeah. So if, I don't know what agency has the responsibility for those standards, but one would hope that it's not just you and other individuals trying to take this organization to task, but an actual governmental agency that's looking out for the, poverty-stricken and disabled community, and that they would be the ones to champion this effort. And I think I agree with you. If that's not happening for whatever reason, corruption or a flaw in the way the system's designed or whatever it is, I think it is pretty draining and maybe ineffectual to do this as an individual. And it's just that, like when the forces of samsara are so strong, embedded, and, there's not enough kind of energy or movement to counterbalance them. For the individual who wants to awaken, it's probably better to just go about your business and live your life in a happy, peaceful manner. And I'm talking in generalities. I don't know what the right thing is for you to do. But it's like, yeah, when Ajahn Panyawado said, yeah, don't become a bhikkhuni because you're going to have to fight for it. I took them seriously. I didn't become a bhikkhuni in an environment where I had to fight for it. I became a bhikkhuni in an environment where it has respect, and I don't have to force anyone to make it happen. People are wanting that to happen. There are bhikkhus who are supporting that, actively wanting that to happen. You need more than just yourself by yourself most of the time. So I think it is a boundary kind of. We can look at boundaries in this context, like where do you want to draw the line in terms of how much you are up for, going through this battle as an individual. Like you said, you've really lost the potential benefit already because it is so hostile for yourself personally. And like you said, the battle for other people really has to be waged by a larger entity. Or if you get some gain out of this, you sort of win. That's in quotes, because what is really going to make a difference? Are they really going to treat the next group of people better? Probably not, given the history. I think that's what you're saying. That's the reality you're coming to.
Yeah, and it's really bearing down on me because a friend of mine who lives in Canada just texted and said that they are going through a very similar situation with their landlord. And I just think our whole system of capitalism is weighted towards people who have money, investors, companies, corporations. And I just am beginning to feel like, well, this is samsara, and why bother? Why bother participating or fighting it? Because it just is the way it is. And any little thing that we do is not really, I'm not changing their minds,
Yeah. However, I agree. That's true. It sounds like that is the case in this situation and probably in a lot of places. But there are places that are little pockets of sunshine in a sense, where it's better for people who have disabilities and low income. This county we're in right now being one of them, as far as I can tell. I mean, as a mendicant, I've been on Medi-Cal, health insurance, and they were just like, they pay for everything.
The best insurance is around.
It's the best insurance around.
Better than
Yeah. It's better than Medicare. It's better than, anything else you can get. And, there's a lot of wealth right here, and there's a lot of compassion here. And, I think they really try to look after people, and I think there's a way better chance. And I've seen actual movements, like when we were living in Mountain View, and they'll put measures on the ballot to protect renters, and they win, even when there's an association of landlords that's trying to put another measure that's confusing the whole issue, making it look almost exactly the same to try to confuse people. And people are switched on, and they're totally voting for the right one, and the other one is just, people are intelligent, they know what their values are. So there are places. And sometimes, it's just not worth it by yourself, because it just doesn't, you can put all your life force into it and it doesn't do anything really. But in a different context, the things you do can help. That's what I think. Drager?
I guess, I guess my question is, what if you can help, but you can't cure? And helping can harm your mindfulness and your skillfulness of conduct. For me, someone set fire to my mom's house a couple months ago. And there's been difficulty with my older brother who have owned the house and hasn't been conducting himself in a compassionate manner. And I've been able to help, like I can talk to her when she's in distress and often bring her to a place of greater clarity. And I can look at times when I've set a boundary to not do that because I have other priorities. And decisions and actions are made that have consequences. And then I can look at other times, like I set up a GoFundMe for her, and it was very successful. Like it raised $1,000 the first weekend, and because of difficulty of insurance, it was very helpful. But then I messed up an interview following that weekend because the being on social media, managing that was so preoccupying, and I didn't care for that priority. So I'm hoping you can give me some advice on how to balance like the responsibility to my mother and the limitation of being able to reliably know I'm engaging with helping in a manner that will preserve my sati sampajanya. And then, yeah.
That's a tough one. It's a tough one. I mean, there's no pat answer, obviously. You have to think about it on a case-by-case basis. Mm-hmm. And you have to weigh, what's happening in your life and recognize that this isn't gonna, it's not like you can come in, you already know this, you've experienced it. It's not like you can come in and change it and it's gonna stay changed. Mm-hmm. So it's like, that this is gonna keep happening. And to really see that, you do have to give your own life some priority too. But I also know you're going to keep trying to help, obviously. It's just a case by case, trying to see what's the right balance. And, none of us stays in the right balance constantly. That's not how balance works. You lean to the left, you lean to the right, because that's how you stay balanced. And so when something happens like, the job interview didn't go well, it's like, well, sometimes job interviews don't go well anyway. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't related to this. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying sometimes you're going to feel like, I put too much in that direction, or I didn't put enough in that direction, because there's no perfect mix. There's no perfect recipe. It's such a judgment as you go. The main thing is to in every way possible maintain your own, like you said, your mindfulness, your sampajanya. No perfect circumstances in this world. And so, if you can keep coming back to that, trying to maintain your own stability, and then do what you can in those, just do what you can, see what you feel like you can attempt to do. And if it doesn't work out the way you hoped, it's okay, because that's how it is too. And you just, try to make the next decision with that new information in mind. Yeah, I commend you. I think sounds like you're doing a good job. It's just always, it's messy. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry it's so hard. Life sure does hand that out sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, stay tuned in with other practitioners as much as you can. Yeah, Anita?
I just wanted to share that in the past I have, whenever I've been accused, like I've tried to help my friends or my relatives, and I've been accused of being selfish. And today I feel that I just created my boundaries and it was okay.
Yeah.
You have to create your boundaries and it's okay.
Yeah. You know what I've seen so many times? Like, you're such a generous and kind person. It seems like ridiculous for someone to accuse you of being selfish. But I've seen this so many times. Like, sometimes when people, like, the way they get to you is to tell you you're exactly not the thing you are so much of. And that's the way, because obviously if you're generous and kind, it's because you want to be generous and kind. And then someone says you're selfish, it really hurts. But you got to remember, hey, I am generous and kind, and this person's just trying to get to me. That's their
I
problem.
think they just project themselves into the people. That's what.
And then I try to tell them, you can do this, this might help you. And they're like, oh, you don't know, you get everything, and you've got a life in a platter, and you've got everything easily. You don't have to work for it. So
that's a good karma.
They just don't understand.
I know the good karma. It's one of the nun told me. Just tell people you have good karma.
You make your own good karma.
Yeah.
They can, don't worry about them.
Yeah, but taking care of our feelings is also important, and that's the first three noble truths. Like, it hurts is dukkha. Being present with that, knowing that there's a way to, like, investigate that and let it go, and use it all for practice. And it's painful, but it doesn't have to continue to be painful forever. Just being present with it, really seeing your way through it, and know that we're not necessarily going to be understood or treated well or fairly. That's probably, it's samsara. It's like people have all these problems. And so try to hear the people around you who love you and see you as you are, and take that in. You're a kind and generous person. I know that you would like to help them.
And people even accuse Buddha for so many things.
I always think about that. Nobody gets off scot-free without being blamed. But if we know that we're keeping moral virtue, we have our good intentions, and we're trying to follow through on them, we don't have to fall for that idea that we somehow are not being good enough. Okay, friends, I think we are at an end. I wish everyone well. I hope this has been useful, and I hope whatever kind of comes up because of it can be used as a source of fuel for development. Should we chant a blessing for everybody? Bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata sabba buddha nubhavena sada suti bhavantu te bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata Sabba Dhamma nubhavena sada suti bhavantu te bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata sabba sankha nubhavena sada suti bhavantu te. Then Draker, I'll be sharing merit with your mom and you. Okay, take care, everybody.